Silly season dominoes are continuing to fall in NASCAR's Ty Dillon will join Rackley Racing in 2024, and it sounds like Matt DiBenedetto may be headed to AM Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports story discussed today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. First, we got one paint scheme to take a look at, and it's Matt Mills' 2024 JF Electric scheme. I like the colors on it overall. I think the paint scheme looks really solid, and I'm glad to see that JF Electric will continue working with Matt Mills in 2024. This paint scheme looks really good. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Valvoline. It was confirmed before Christmas that Valvoline has renewed for 2024 with Hendrick Motorsports. They'll sponsor William Byron for 2 races in 2024 and Kyle Larson for 2 races in 2024. Valvoline has sponsored Kyle Larson since 2021. I believe also William Byron since 2020 or 2021. I'm really glad to see that Valvoline, though, is going to be sticking around. And I think the paint schemes in general, especially for Kyle Larson, looks really solid and really good, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Costco. As it was reported earlier this week that Costco is opening a new location at NASCAR's One Daytona mixed-use development across the street from Daytona early next year. They've been building up the area around Daytona over the last couple years, especially with the Daytona Rising project, and now it's becoming more and more like a city when you go there, and now they're going to have a Costco. I think that's really exciting, and I'm really glad to see there's a new Costco coming into the Daytona area. There's a lot of shops around the area, and Daytona is becoming this big city and this big racetrack, and it continues to get bigger and bigger over time. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cheddars. It was announced about a week or two ago that Cheddars has renewed sponsorship with Richard Childress Racing. They will continue sponsoring Kyle Busch for the next few years, and it is a multi-year deal. Now, it's unclear how many races Cheddars is going to sponsor Kyle Busch in 2024, but I would imagine that they are likely going to sponsor Kyle Busch probably around 5 to 6 races in 2024. Look, Cheddars has been a sponsor of RCR, I believe, since all the way back in 2018 or 2019. They've been a sponsor for quite a few years, and I think they really like working with Kyle Busch and also Richard Childress Racing as well. We see like Olive Garden come into play and Longhorns maybe join the sponsorship well because Darden's really likes working with RCR, so just maybe we'll get more sponsorship when Cheddar's down the road, but I'm really glad to see that Cheddar's will continue working with RCR. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about FedEx. It was reported by Adam Stern earlier this evening that FedEx is expected to buy roughly the same number of paint schemes in 2024 from Joe Gibbs Racing as it did this year, when it reduced its primary count down to around a dozen in broader cost-cutting efforts. Now, they have been reducing their sponsors, that being FedEx, with Joe Gibbs Racing since 2021. So it doesn't shock and surprising to see they're cutting back down their sponsorship. Hey, the good news is FedEx is sticking around. Obviously, FedEx has been making some big cost-cutting measures. It is good to see, though, that they are going to be sticking around for 2024. There's a lot of worry early in the year that FedEx may end up leaving. But hey, at least on the good news and the good side, that FedEx is not going anywhere anytime soon. And good to see that FedEx is going to be sticking around. And really awesome and good stuff. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyffin Simpson. As it was announced earlier today that Kyffin Simpson will be driving for Dragon Speed Racing in the Rolex 24. Dragon Speed is going to be running, I think, 3 or 4 drivers in the 2024 Rolex 24 at Daytona. And Kyffin Simpson, I believe, for the first time will be with that organization. They will be, I believe, be in the LMP2 class. They've really been competitive in the LMP2 class, and I think Dragon Speed has won in the secondary class in the Rolex 24 before. Kyffin Simpson, of course, has been really successful. He's, of course, going to be running full-time at IndyCar with Chip Ganassi Racing as a rookie in 2024. I'm very excited to see that Kyffin is getting an opportunity and a shot, though, to drive for this team in 2024, and we'll see how he performs in the 2024 Rolex 24. I don't think you'd have to worry too much, as I think he will do a pretty solid and a really good job. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Lindsay Brewer. As it was announced on the Friday before Christmas that Lindsay Brewer will join Juncos Hollinger Racing in 2024 in Indy NXT. For those who do not know, Lindsay Brewer is a race car driver, both I believe in USF 2000 series in 2023, and also of course has a big following on Instagram as well. I'm going to be real with you guys. She's only there because of her big Instagram following. She is not the greatest race car driver in the world. Let's be perfectly honest. She doesn't do an amazing job, and she didn't have a lot of good performances in USF 2000. And Juncos Hollinger Racing is a pretty solid team, especially in Indy NXT. I think she'll do okay, to be honest, but I think that she is not going to be a championship threat or contender, and I think she's going to struggle just a little bit. That being said, we'll see how she ends up doing in 2024. I'm glad to see she does have a ride for the 2024 season, but let's be honest, I'm not expecting much from Lindsay Brewer in 2024. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cody Roush. As it was announced earlier today and reported by Joseph Surgley that Michael Sean, who is the manager of CR7 Motorsports, confirmed that they will have a second truck in 2024 for owner of the organization, Cody Roush, as he'll drive the number 97 truck for CR9 Motorsports at Daytona and Talladega Superspeedway. Cody Roush, I believe, is not competing in the truck series either 2021 or 2022, as he's had drivers like Grant Enfinger and Colby Howard and Blaine Perkins drive for the organization over the course of the last 2 years. Cody, I think, will do an okay job. It'd be really cool to see him have a chance of winning because he actually almost won at Daytona, I believe, 2 years ago in 2021 in that photo finish with Ben Rhodes and Jordan Anderson. I think Cody Roush could be a sleeper pick if he makes the show. There's going to be a lot of drivers at that Daytona race, though, but really cool to see that Cody Roush will get an opportunity chance to drive for CR7 Motorsports at Daytona and Talladega. Really awesome and really exciting stuff. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, currently at the moment, the Tulsa Shootout is going on. A lot of big-name drivers are at the Tulsa Shootout. Kyle Busch is among them. His son, Brexton Busch, is there. Haley Deegan is at the event. You've got Jesse Love, I think I mentioned, he's over there. You've got Chase Cabry running the event. Brent Cruz is over there, and a lot of people who are competing in the Tulsa Shootout currently at the moment, which I think concludes tomorrow night. Earlier tonight, though, there was a really scary wreck that Kyle Busch was involved in. Luckily for Kyle Busch, he was okay, but his car is unfortunately done. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to repair it, which is a shame, because after the first night, Kyle Busch actually had been doing a really impressive and a really good job, and had been really competitive, been in the top 50 in his class that he had been in. His son has been able to go out and win some of his classes, which is really impressive, and I'm glad to see that Kyle Busch is okay, and there were no serious injuries, or injuries for Kyle Busch for that matter. A really scary wreck. We know that we've had drivers get injured earlier this year, like Alex Bowman, unfortunately. Nonetheless, so glad to see that Kyle Busch was okay and was not seriously hurt from his crash. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Blake Banbridge. As it was confirmed earlier this week, I believe on Tuesday or Wednesday, that Blake Banbridge will be the crew chief for Daniel Dye in the Truck Series in 2024. Blake Banbridge, those who don't know, has been a long-term crew chief in NASCAR, actually crew chief for Rusty Wallace Racing back in the mid-2000s to the late 2000s, and also Blake Banbridge was a crew chief as certainly earlier in the year with Stuart Friesen, and there were some improved results with Stuart Friesen in 2023. Now, what do I expect Blake Banbridge to do with Daniel Dye? I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he performs because Daniel Dye does need that veteran guidance to work with him in 2024. And the hope is of Blake Banbridge, who has a lot of experience as a crew chief. The hope is that Blake can really go out there and help Daniel Dye in 2024. I'm not expecting them to set the world on fire. Daniel Dye kind of struggled with GMS Racing in 2023. Hopefully, though, we can see a little bit of improvement from Daniel Dye, and Blake Banbridge can hopefully try to help him out going into the 2024 season. We'll see how things go, but glad to see that Blake Banbridge will be the crew chief for him in 2024. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Indy 500. As it was reported by Adam Stern right around Christmas time that IMS says it is up by roughly 10,000 tickets for the 108th Indy 500 versus the comparable sales period last year, and that it would already have 225,000 people in attendance as if the race May event had taken place at when this report came out. Obviously, a massive reason why ticket sales are up for the Indy 500 for 2024. There's one big reason. Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson is going to be attempting the double in 2024. He'll be driving for Aaron McLaren in the number 17 car. Now, Kyle Larson obviously does have to qualify into the event, but many are expecting that Kyle Larson will be easily able to make the show and will have a really good chance and opportunity to not only do really well, but maybe become the first driver to win the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 on the same day. And of course, Indianapolis has a lot of interest. There could be other drivers that are entered that we don't know at this point, but it's really awesome and good to see the Indy 500 continues to have a lot of people showing up, and I think that number is going to get bigger and bigger. Like I said, 225,000 people, and we're only in December. That is really good news, and I think that number is only going to get higher and higher as time goes on. That's one of the races that's on my bucket list to go to for sure, but it's really awesome and good to see that the Indy 500 continues to increase in sales. I think that's really awesome and exciting stuff overall when it comes to the Indy 500. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. As it was reported by Matt Weaver from Motorsports Wire and the short track scene that Kyle Larson, along with running the high limit series of racing in the NASCAR Cup Series, he plans to run the Rumley late model 15 times in 2024 in dirt late models, meaning that Kyle Larson's probably going to run around 40 dirt races in 2024. I believe that's going to be increased on the amount of races that Kyle Larson has ran, which Kyle Larson, of course, we know how good he is in the NASCAR Cup Series, but he's also one of the best dirt race car drivers we have ever seen in the history of dirt racing. Now, I think Kyle Larson, we all know he jumped into a late model and was extremely competitive from the get-go, and I expect that Kyle Larson will be, once again, very competitive in 2024 in those select races. If I had to predict how many races Kyle Larson is going to win in 2024, I think he gets at least 7 or 8 wins in the late model side. I think Kyle Larson is going to be competitive, and I think it's just really awesome and good to see that Kyle Larson wants to continue working and doing late model racing in 2024. So really exciting stuff, and glad to see that we will see Kyle Larson do some of those races in 2024. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, I've already talked about Kyle Busch when it comes to racing in the Tulsa Shootout, but Matt Weaver did actually ask Kyle Busch about potentially maybe running the Chili Bowl in the future. And Kyle Busch says right now that he is not planning to run the Chili Bowl in 2024 or in the near future. The reason he mentions is because of weight. He made a little bit of joke in regards to weight issues. He says he's 200 pounds, and that is a big reason why he will not run the Chili Bowl Nationals. That is a really, really good shame because Kyle Busch, in my opinion, has become a pretty overall good dirt racer. He's been doing a lot more dirt races over time. He's been extremely competitive in dirt racing, and I think that if he ran the Chili Bowl, while I don't think he would overall win the race and get in his first start, I think he could honestly have a really solid run at the Chili Bowl. He may be able to get as far as like the C main or even the D main your first run, which, by the way, if you get to the C main or D main on the Saturday night, that is very, very impressive. If he's able to win his main heat event, I think that would be extremely incredible. I really hope Kyle Busch in the future runs the Chili Bowl. Maybe in 2025 he changes his mind and decides in fact to run the Chili Bowl, but at least right now Kyle Busch is not going to run the Chili Bowl Nationals, which, like I said, is really disappointing and a great shame because honestly I want to see it happen. I respect Kyle Busch's decision though, but then again I really do want to see Kyle Busch run the Chili Bowl Nationals in the not so distant future, though right now it sounds like Kyle Busch will not be doing that anytime soon, especially in 2024. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Chicago Street Course. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern late Monday that according to the Sun-Times from Chicago on the Chicago Street Course, they said afterward, we realized most of our early reporting failed to capture the views of the scenes of locals who not only didn't mind the race, but were excited about it. This is one of the publications in groups that was really, really going after the Chicago Street Course race right before the event ended up happening. And yes, there were big issues with the Chicago Street Course event, but mostly it's on the city than anything else, and NASCAR did nothing wrong when it comes to situation, because they had a once-in-a-year, basically, storm that came through, and people said who lived up in the area of Chicago were saying that they had a drop before that, so that's nothing that NASCAR really can't control. Just bring NASCAR to an event, you're more than likely going to get a massive weather storm. Obviously, they didn't do their research, and honestly, they should have brought someone out to the racetrack who could have gone and see the event themselves, because I thought the race itself was actually phenomenal, and we got to see history with Shane Van Gisbergen picking up his first career victory in his first start, and now that dude's going to have an opportunity to run full-time in the NASCAR Cup, not NASCAR Cup Series, but full-time in Xfinity, and run part-time in the Cup Series in 2024. In general, I think it's really good to see that they at least retracted their statement. At least they're admitting they made a massive mistake in this situation, and at least it's good that they've done that, in my personal opinion. Again, they need to have someone out at the racetrack that knows a little more about the sport, and they should have been out at the racetrack covering it a little bit better. Nonetheless, so it's really good to see they kind of retracted the statements they had earlier in the weeks before that, and I'm glad to see that they at least admit that they were not completely right in the way they reported the situation, and they were wrong about the way they handled that situation. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the SRX. As it was announced right before Christmas time that the SRX will be going to Cedar Lake Speedway in 2024 on August 8th. This is the first of two dirt tracks that has been confirmed for 2024. It is still unclear what the season finale is going to be for 2024, but I'll speculate on that in just a little bit. Cedar Lake Speedway, for those who don't know, is located in New Richmond, Wisconsin, so they'll be staying in the Midwest area in 2024. What's really interesting about the SRX this year and how they've been releasing dates is they usually all release all the dates at one time and reveal the drivers. They've been doing the opposite this time around. It sounds like they're going to be a little more interested in seeing what drivers they do release over time, and maybe they're going to release all the drivers at once and release all the tracks at a different time. It is cool, though, to see a track like Cedar Lake Speedway that's never been on the SRX schedule getting an opportunity shot to be on the SRX schedule. As for what the final race this season is probably going to be, I speculate most likely it's going to be Eldora, considering Tony Stewart owns the track. I think Eldora most likely is going to be there. Maybe they go up to Canada, go to Ohsweken Speedway. That certainly could be an option as well. But of course, I think Cedar Lake Raceway is kind of close to the Michigan area. I think that's when the Michigan weekend is supposed to happen, if I'm not mistaken. So it's relatively close to Michigan International Speedway. Nonetheless, it's good to see the SRX is going to Cedar Lake, and that is the fifth of 6 tracks that has been confirmed for 2024. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about William Sawalich. As it was announced, I believe, on Thursday before Christmas, that William Sawalich will be returning to Trion Garage in 2024, driving the number 1 truck for 9 races in 2024. In addition to running a majority of the ARCA season in 2024 and driving part-time in Xfinity once he turns 18, he will get some more experience in the Craftsman Truck Series. Now, William Sawalich, for those who don't know, I think is a very, very talented driver, and I think this is an amazing and incredible opportunity for him going into 2024. Because I think he got 1 or 2 top 10s in the select races he ran and showed a lot of improvement in speed throughout 2023. Now, do I think that William Sawalich could win his first career race in trucks? Absolutely. I think he's got the capabilities to. Trion Garage is a really strong organization. They've been getting faster and faster over time. He's going to be working with some pretty good teammates in 2024, especially Corey Heim. And I think in general, I think that William Sawalich will have a really good opportunity chance to compete for some wins in 2024. I honestly think he will get his first career win in 2024. Again, there's less competition in this series. You're going to have, of course, no longer going to have Carson Hocevar next year. You're not going to have Zane Smith and probably Matt DiBenedetto as well in 2024. Good to see, though, that William Sawalich does have a ride for 2024 because, in my opinion, he deserves to be in the series in 2024. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Robbie Gordon. Now, Nathan Kiani, who's Kenseth fan on Twitter put out a tweet in regards to Robbie Gordon. And according to a tweet that was surfacing on Twitter, Robbie Gordon is not 100% ruling out a return to racing. Not just in IndyCar, but also in NASCAR. Apparently he's waiting for the right opportunity to make a return to the sport. The last time that Robbie Gordon competed in IndyCar, I believe, was all the way back in 2004 or 2005, when, of course, he tried to attempt the Indy 500 in 2004. The last time Robbie Gordon competed in the NASCAR Cup Series, or NASCAR in general, was all the way back in 2013 with his number 7 organization. Robbie Gordon, I think, was a pretty solid driver in NASCAR, but he obviously was someone who was kind of had a bad reputation in the sport. But when you look at versatility and talent-wise, Robbie Gordon was an incredible talent. Now, what's interesting for Robbie Gordon is I believe Robbie Gordon is 54 years old. So Robbie Gordon is a lot older. Where could Robbie Gordon race if he was to come back? Well, maybe he runs with RFK Racing, perhaps in that number 60 car. Obviously, RFK Racing is going to have that 60 car in 2024. Cam Waters is rumored to drive for that team, and also a couple other drivers are rumored to drive for that team as well. So maybe we see him get a chance to run there. That could certainly be an option. It would be really cool to see him run the Indy 500. I believe he would be the oldest driver to run the Indy 500 in recent memory. I think Mario might have been a little older than him, but you look at Robbie Gordon, he'll be 54 and 55 in 2024. It would be cool, though, to see Robbie Gordon come back to the sport. Do I think he will officially come back? I think it's to be determined, and we have to wait and see what happens. Nonetheless, we'll see what Robbie Gordon ends up doing in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Mike Joy. As there was a tweet that was put, I believe, by Fox Sports NASCAR page that Mike Joy will once again call the 2024 Daytona 500. This will be Mike Joy's 45th Daytona 500 calling the sport. That is absolutely incredible. Mike Joy, in my opinion, despite not being as good as he's been in recent years, Mike Joy, in my opinion, is one of the greatest commentators in the world and one of the best lead commentators ever. There is a really good chance, however, that this year's Daytona 500 in 2024, the upcoming one, is likely going to be his last Daytona 500. Mike Joy, at the end of 2024, is going to be 75 years old. And I think there's a really good chance and possibility, yes, Fox is renewing their coverage, but there's a really good chance and possibility that maybe Adam Alexander, I could honestly see him taking over as a lead commentator for Fox Sports in 2025. But that may not end up happening because let's be honest, Mike Joy has been struggling over the last couple years. But my personal opinion is it's incredible he's been doing this for as long as he's been, and to do it for nearly 50 years is phenomenal and absolutely incredible. I respect that a lot. He's one of the best ever to do it, in my opinion, and I think Mike Joy is absolutely and personally a first ballot Hall of Famer. So we'll see what happens with Mike Joy. It's good to see that he will call the 2024 Daytona 500. Could be his last year, but he may do it for a few more years. We'll have to wait and see what happens, though, in regards to that. Nonetheless, I'm glad to see that he will likely be doing it and once again be doing it in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about 2311 Racing. As reported by Bob Pockers right before Christmas, answering a question that 2311 Racing is not expected to run a third car in the 2024 Daytona 500. Now, 2311 Racing did enter a car in the 2023 Daytona 500 for Travis Pastrana. A lot of us had thought originally maybe it would be Carl Edwards who was going to be the driver, but it was eventually revealed that it was going to be Travis Pastrana. Now, that is a really great shame because there had been a little speculation maybe 2311 Racing could run a third car in the Daytona 500, have stronger numbers, and help Toyota out as well. But we already know that Toyota is expanding with Legacy Motor Club, and they may not need that as much. But if they were to run a third car, I would have to imagine a Chandler Smith or Sheldon Creed are the most likely drivers that could drive that seat, though maybe they could have gotten something like a Carl Edwards out of retirement or Lewis Hamilton. I know some people probably say Kurt Busch, but Kurt Busch obviously is retired, so that's not happening anytime soon. Nonetheless, it's a shame that 2311 Racing more than likely will not run a car in the Daytona 500 in 2024 or a third car. I would have loved to see maybe also even Eric Almirola if he doesn't drive the 11 car because there's still a lot of basically possibilities that maybe we don't see Denny Hamlin run the 2024 Daytona 500 because of that shoulder surgery he's had recently. Remember, the Daytona 500 is only 50 days away from today, so we'll see what happens. Nonetheless, so we'll see what ends up happening in regards to that future if they were to run, but it sounds like right now at this particular moment that 2311 Racing at this given moment in time will not enter a third car in the Daytona 500 like they did in 2023. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about IndyCar and iRacing. As it was reported on Christmas Eve, according to Adam Stern, that IndyCar is moving toward a return to iRacing's platform with an official announcement likely coming early in the new year. Obviously, it was confirmed about a month ago that IndyCar had cut his ties with Motorsports Games, as there's a lot of conversation, most likely that Motorsports Games is going to go bankrupt, as they cut their ties because they did not release a video game and they did not have an esports league. Obviously, IndyCar was not on iRacing in 2023 because of that said contract that was going in place in 2023, but now it sounds like it's very likely that that will be coming back in 2024, the IndyCar license returning to iRacing. I think that is a huge win, but again, it was a really huge loss, and I think when they got away from iRacing, that was a massive bad blunder for IndyCar overall. And I think that there is going to be a lack of trust. Now, there has been some talks and conversations in the last couple of weeks that maybe iRacing could produce an IndyCar game in the coming years, but if they were to release a game, it would not be anytime soon currently at the moment. But trust me, I think a lot of fans who are IndyCar fans would love to see an IndyCar game come from the iRacing development team. They maybe use some of the iRacing stuff, and I think that it's just good in general to see that IndyCar is trying to get the stuff resolved and trying to get the license and agreement back. Again, an announcement is expected around the early portion of 2024 with this coming back. Obviously, IndyCar's got a lot of issues that they need to resolve. There's a lot of worry about Honda potentially leaving in the near future after 2026. There's a lot of worry about that. Hopefully, they can get this issue resolved and they get this deal signed, because IndyCar going back to iRacing, I think, is really, really good. Don't make an exclusive license so we can have other companies come into play for IndyCar, but in general, hopefully this can get resolved and we see IndyCar back on the iRacing platform. It sounds like, though, that will be happening very likely soon. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brody Cassill. As it was reported by Adam Stern on Monday that according to reports, sources close to Cassill have indicated that a permanent move stateside is nothing on the cards short term and wants to continue full-time in Supercars beyond 2024. Obviously, we know that Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be going full-time in NASCAR in 2024. And we do know that Brody Cassill is going to run a select number of NASCAR Cup Series races in 2023 with Richard Childress Racing for around 4 to 5 races. And there have been some conversations maybe that he could go full-time NASCAR long-term with RCR, but right now that is not going to be the case, which I think helps RCR's long-term future. Look, I think Brody Cassill, you have to remember this too, Brody Cassill, I believe, is 26 or 27 years old, so he is still a very relatively young driver. He is a much younger driver than Shane Van Gisbergen, and he's coming off of winning the Supercars championship. So I think that he wants to stay over at Supercars and try to win more championships in more races, as I think that there would be a little bit of struggles for him coming over to NASCAR. But unlike SVG, he does have a little bit of oval experience. He actually competed in the ARCA West Series or ARCA East Series, I think 2016 and 2017, and has already tried to come over and race stateside back in the mid-2010s, but unfortunately that attempt failed, and that's why he went back to Supercars racing in the late 2010s, where he has already had a lot of success and got his first championship in 2023. Again, though, it is expected he will run a select number of NASCAR Cup Series races in 2024. And I think if he's successful in NASCAR, maybe long-term we do see him come to the Cup Series full-time in 2025. But what we all do have to remember is that there's more on the side of this story than meets the eye. Nonetheless, I think it's very interesting to see, and right now, Brody Cassill is going to remain in Supercars, at least for the near future, but it's interesting that there are legitimate conversations about potentially Brody Cassill heading over to NASCAR, but at least right now, staying in Supercars for the near future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Money Team. As it was reported right before Christmas that the Money Team is going to enter around 5 to 8 NASCAR Cup Series races in 2024. And the hope for the organization is they're hoping to go full-time in the Cup Series in 2025 with or without a charter. Now, there have been a lot of chatter middle portion of the year that the Money Team had actually shut down their organization. However, they had confirmed to Joseph Sugley from TobyChristie.com that they had not shut down and they were working on their plans for 2024. Obviously, the Money Team's had a little bit of a rough history. They haven't really had the smoothest history in the world. They did make a couple starts in 2023. They actually made the Daytona 500 with Connor Daly, even though they were struggling to get on the racetrack in the first place. And then, of course, they did run one or two other starts with Connor Daly throughout the season. Now, the big question right now is who will the driver be for 2024? Maybe they get someone out of nowhere. I don't think it'll be Matt DiBenedetto now because of where he might be going in 2024. Maybe Jeffrey Earhart could be a potential possibility. Maybe Helio Castroneves does get promised that opportunity to run the Daytona 500. We know he's interested in running the Daytona 500, so that certainly could be a possibility. Maybe someone else who we don't know at this point, like a J.J. Yeley perhaps, gets an opportunity and shot. I don't know at this particular moment, but them potentially going full-time might be a big loss for the team long-term because we already know at this point that you basically don't have a charter, you're only getting like 1 or 2% of the piece of pie. Now, obviously, that pie is going to be increasing in the prices in 2025, considering the teams are going to be getting a 40% increase. I would imagine that the open teams are going to be getting an increase as well. Now, there's also possibly there could be more charters in the upcoming charter deal. Obviously, that charter deal has still not been approved at this particular moment, but that could help the Money Team overall in general as well. Nonetheless, it's really good to see that they're having conversations, and it's good to see they're back. I know, like I said, there have been a lot of talks that this team was going to shut down, but I think it's good for the sport that a team like the Money Team is going to be around. I know people probably disagree with me on that, but having more organizations around, I think that is the better for the sport in general. So we'll see what happens in regards to the Money Team, and if they do show up, but it sounds like they will show up in 2024, at least for a select number of races, and maybe, just maybe, in 2025, we are going to see the Money Team join on a full-time basis, though I think that they're going to need a charter to do that in 2024, or 25, I should say. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Frankie Munoz. Now, if you go on Frankie Munoz's Instagram, you will see that Frankie Munoz is teasing his 2024 plans. And it sounds like Frankie is close to announcing his 2024 plans. Frankie Munoz actually ran full-time in the ARCA Series in 2023, where he finished 4th in the standings, but Frankie has been saying publicly that he does want to move up to the NASCAR Xfinity or the Truck Series in 2024. Now, a lot of people are wondering where Frankie Munoz is going to be going in 2024. There was a lot of chatter early in the offseason that Frankie could be going to RSS Racing in 2024. However, everybody at RSS Racing has been denying this, and Frankie himself has denied this, that he will be going over there. So I don't believe Frankie Munoz is going to be going to RSS Racing. You think about the organizations that are available for 2024 in NASCAR. Obviously, AM Racing could be an option, but it sounds like right now that's not going to be a possibility, as we'll probably be talking here just a second about who most likely will be taking over that seat in 2024. Maybe goes to ThorSport part-time. That 6.6 truck does have some select races that are available, so maybe he goes there in 2024, but they've got other drivers that could be available to drive that for that team in 2024. Maybe goes to front row if they do run a second truck. I know they're having some chatter. Maybe they only run one, but they could run a second truck in 2024, and maybe goes back to ARCA in 2024. That certainly could be a possibility, an option for Frankie in 2024. But I would really love to see Frankie Munoz move up full-time to the Xfinity Series or the Truck Series in 2024. But the other big thing to think about is sponsorship. Frankie in ARCA, he struggled to pick up sponsors, which is really crazy considering Frankie does have a lot of popularity. You would think for someone who is as popular as he is, he would be able to pick up sponsors a lot easier. But it didn't seem like to be the case. So I really hope they're able to find sponsorship for him in 2024 so he can go full-time in the 2024 season. We'll see what happens in regards to Frankie Munoz and what he does in 2024. Again, I think there is a chance he does move up to ARCA. I think there's a chance he move up past ARCA and go to Trucks or Xfinity, but I think there's also a chance he may stay in ARCA in 2024 with Retta Jones Racing. We'll see what happens though in regards to that. If you want my prediction on when that announcement's going to come, I think it's going to come past the first of the year, though it might come right before the end of the year, and if it does break before the end of the year, we'll cover that on this channel. Nonetheless, right now, Frankie Munoz is teasing his 2024 plans. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next big story of today's episode as we're talking about Kaz Grala. Now, I think I already talked about this on the channel earlier last week, right before Christmas time, but there was a tweet that came out from Seriously Fast Motorsports and also LJ Toledo. And according to them, Kaz Grala may be headed to Rick Ware Racing in 2024, might be driving the number 15 car in 2024. Now, obviously, I thought that maybe they kind of don't mention the number exactly in the tweet, but I've been speculating that most likely Kaz Grala will drive the 15 car in the Cup Series in 2024. Now, if it is true that Kaz Grala does in fact go to Rick Ware Racing in 2024, I think it would be a very interesting move for Kaz's career. Kaz Grala is coming off of having a solid year with Sam Hunt Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series, where Kaz Grala was able, in Xfinity Series I should say, where he I think had 4 or 5 top 10s with Sam Hunt Racing, and I believe finished in the top 20 in the standings as well. And there was a couple times this year where he could have won. I go back to Road America, where both he and Sage Karam had some really strong performances. The big question for me is, will he struggle if he goes to Rick Ware Racing? Honestly, I think that there will be a little bit of struggles. It's not due to Kaz's talent, even though I think Rick Ware is going to show improvement because they are getting Justin Haley in 2024, and we know that RFK is going to have a stronger technical lines in 2024. I am still a little worried that that could, in general, hurt this team in 2024 or hurt Kaz Grala in his thing. We also have to remember this too. Kaz Grala just today turned 24 years old or 25 years old. Kaz is still a relatively young driver. Despite being in NASCAR in the top 3 series all the way back 2016 or even 2015, Kaz Grala is still only 25 years old, so Kaz Grala still has a long career ahead of him. And it sounds like if it is true that it is a multi-year deal with Rick Ware Racing, they could build around him. In long term, if Kaz does well enough, this could lead Kaz Grala to going all the way over full-time to maybe a Roush. You think about this, if it is a multi-year deal, we could go to Roush, and that could certainly be a possibility because Brad Keselowski, he's not getting any younger, and I think he's looking for his potential replacement long-term. Obviously, I think Justin Haley will be the first option to go with as a replacement because Justin Haley, I think, is a very, very talented driver, and he's about the same age as Kaz Grala. Justin is 24 years old, but I think Justin Haley right now is a better driver than Kaz Grala, and I think Justin will have a better year than Kaz Grala at the team. But it shows that Rick Ware is taking things a lot more seriously. They've had drivers like Ryan Newman and J.J. Yeley and Cole Custer come in, even Riley Hurts come in and drive for the organization. Another have some chatter, maybe Cody Ware could go back full-time, but at this point, if it is true that Kaz Grala is going to go full-time with Rick Ware Racing in 2024, I think this would be a very successful and a really strong pairing, and I think both drivers would do a good job. I think there definitely would be some pretty big improvement for sure with the organization, and I think it could overall be a good move for the team. We'll see what happens in regards to that, and if Kaz Grala does in fact go there. If you want my prediction, I think Kaz Grala might get 1 top 10 in the year, but I think he'll get some top 20s and maybe ends up finishing a little higher in points than we see in that 15 car. And I think there's a chance that both those guys could end up being ahead of that top 34 in points and being a top 33 in owners points, though I think it is going to be tough in certain instances. Nonetheless, so it sounds like that Kaz Grala could be headed there, and I think it'd be a very interesting move if he does in fact head over to Rick Ware Racing in 2024. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Ty Dillon. as it was announced earlier today that Ty Dillon will be joining Rackley Racing in the Craftsman Truck Series in 2024, driving the number 25 truck. He will have 16 races sponsored by Rackley Roofing, with the other races to be determined, though many people believe that Ferris Motors more than likely will be the sponsor for the rest of those races in 2024. In addition to that, Ty Dillon is working on going part-time in the Cup Series in 2024. And on the same Series 7 NASCAR radio interview that he had, he confirmed that Chad Kendrick will likely be moving up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024, presumably what the driver will talk about at the end of this episode. Ty Dillon, going back to the Craftsman Truck Series, is a very interesting move. The last time I believe Ty Dillon was full-time in the Truck Series, I believe, is all the way back to 2013. He's made select starts here and there and has had some really solid performances. When he ran in the Truck Series full-time, he did pretty good there. But you look at Ty Dillon, a lot of people thought maybe Ty Dillon was going to go maybe back and run full-time in the Cup Series. A lot of speculation early in the offseason has stated Ty Dillon was going to go full-time in the number 16 car, but obviously I think sponsorship fell through, and that did not end up happening. As for him going to Rackley, it's a very interesting move. You obviously look at them, they're sponsoring Ty Dillon for majority of race in the season, probably confirming that they did not have as much sponsorship for him. Now, how do I think Ty Dillon is going to perform at Rackley in 2024? I think he needs to be contending for the playoffs. Expectations has to be you got to contend for the playoffs. Can you look at Rackley in 2023? Rackley had 13 top 10s, 12 of those coming with Matt DiBenedetto, and Matt DiBenedetto was able to make the playoffs of the team, and they finished 9th in the owner's standings. Ty Dillon needs to be consistently in the top 15 throughout the season, and he needs to be up front and getting a chance at wins. Honestly, I think he could win a race this year, and I think that he could have a shot there because the team has shown a lot more improvement in 2023. Ultimately, the goal, you got to make the playoffs in 2024. If you can do that, I think that's a really good step in the right direction for you, especially if you're trying to rebuild your career. He could do something similar to John Hunter Nemechek. John Hunter struggled in Cup in his rookie year in 2020. He took a chance on himself going back down to the Truck Series, and now 3 years later, in 2024, he's back in the Cup Series full-time with Legacy Motor Club. Now, I have to be realistic about Ty Dillon. Ty Dillon had struggled in the Cup Series in 2023 with Spire. Did not have a great year with the team. Only had, I think, maybe 3 top 20 finishes the whole entire season, and didn't even score a single top 10 finish, which is the only full-time driver that did not have a single top 10. Yes, Noah Gragson started up as full-time, but didn't end up finishing the season. He also failed to score a single top 10 throughout the year. As for my expectation, like I said, I think he'll contend for the playoffs and do overall a solid job. This could lead to him long-term going back. This is like an audition for Ty Dillon because Ty Dillon, he's 31 years old, and at the start of 2024, he'll be around 32 years old. This could eventually lead him going back to the Cup Series, but I think he's making overall a pretty good career decision for himself to make the jump back down to the Truck Series. Here's why I think it is a good career decision. Again, I think this could lead to Ty Dillon getting his confidence back. Ty Dillon has lost his confidence as a driver. I know he said in the press conference back in late 2022 when he was going to Spire that he had a lot of confidence in the team, but he just really did not have a good year and was let go from the team for Carson Hocevar, who I think right now is a better driver than Ty Dillon. Now, do I think Ty Dillon right now is a better driver than the guy that we'll talk about later, Matt DiBenedetto? Honestly, I don't think he is. But Ty Dillon, I think, will be pretty competitive. There is less competition next year, and I think that he has a really good chance to have some good runs in 2024. Again, I think he is someone to watch for. I think it's a good career move for him to go back down to trucks. He will be around that 32-year-old range, so hopefully he can show some improvement in the 2024 season. He needs to show improvement if he's going to have an opportunity long-term to go back Cup racing. But right now, we'll see how things kind of shake out for him going into 2024. But Ty Dillon will be going Truck Series racing, which I think is a little bit of a shocker to me and most people, maybe long-term. And again, going back to that Cup rumor, this could lead him to go in a team like the Money Team, perhaps. Maybe he does go part-time with College Racing, the 16 car, because we know Allmendinger is going to be there part-time. Josh Williams, more than likely, is going to make some select starts. And maybe even SVG makes starts. So some people speculate he could drive that 91 car for Trackhouse, that Project 91 entry, perhaps. perhaps, that certainly could be an option. So we may see Ty Dillon back with Colligan Cup, but right now, Ty Dillon in 2024 will be with Rackley Racing, which I think, like I said, for him, is a overall pretty good career move. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Matt DiBenedetto. Now, Matt DiBenedetto has been one of the biggest stories in regards to silly season over the last couple months. Matt DiBenedetto has been teasing his 2024 plans in certain videos, saying that he's been working on sponsorship, been working on it for the last couple of months. Well, a couple days ago on December 27th at around 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock Central Standard Time, or about 7 o'clock I should say, Matt DiBenedetto put out the pen tweet indicating that he has something signed for 2024. You had a lot of people speculating they may not even be in a seat in 2024, but it sounds like he's got a ride for 2024. Now, where is Matt DiBenedetto going to be headed in 2024? Well, according to the anonymous source account, Private Porno, who's gotten a lot of stuff correct over the last couple months, it sounds like that Matt DiBenedetto may be headed to AM Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024. We already know that AM Racing is going to be expanding to a two-car operation in the 2024 season. Hailie Deegan is going to drive the number 15 car on a full-time basis, and Matt DiBenedetto sounds like may end up in the number 25 seat. Now, Matt DiBenedetto going to AM Racing in the Xfinity Series is not a big upgrade, but it's not a downgrade for him, because if we're having a downgrade, you'd be staying in the Truck Series with a mid-pack team. If you go to AM Racing, you're going to have a decent organization to go with. We know that AM Racing does have a technical alliance with Supercars Racing, and it's a veteran driver that really could help out Hailie Deegan. I think Matt DiBenedetto and Brett Moffitt are comparable in stats, so I think Brett Moffitt might be a little bit better of a driver, who we'll talk about here in just a little bit. If he does go to AM Racing, my prediction for Matt DiBenedetto is I think he will contend for some top 10s, and I think he'll have an outside chance to make the playoffs in 2024. Look, I know people have a lot of opinions on Matt DiBenedetto. I will say this here. What he did 2 years ago at Phoenix with the whole Wood Brothers situation, not a good look on his part. That was a pretty bad move on his end. I think that he has handled a lot of these teams and he's burned a lot of bridges in his career. I think that's a fair criticism you can say about Matt DiBenedetto. But the guy deserves to be racing. He got Rackley Racing to the playoffs in 2023. He could have won a few races in 2023. There were a couple truck races that look back. He had a shot to win North Wilkesboro. Obviously, Kyle Larson, Bubba Wallace, I think, outperformed him in that racer. Bubba Wallace beat him on the tires. You had Darlington early in the year where they were running top 5 and had the fastest truck at one point, and they obviously had a little bit of issues, I think, with power steering near the end of the race that cost him a shot at the win there. Matt DiBenedetto had a couple chances to win, and he got that controversial win at Talladega, which people will argue he shouldn't have won the race. Obviously, Brett Holmes maybe should have won the race, but still, Matt DiBenedetto has had a couple opportunities to win. And remember, back in 2019, he battled Denny Hamlin hard for the victory, and he nearly beat Denny Hamlin. He got damaged because Ryan Newman blocked him in front of him, and he nearly won that race. The guy deserves to be in the sport, man. I'm not saying he deserves a top-tier ride. This is a solid ride for him. But the hope I have for Matt DiBenedetto is that he just doesn't put himself in the spotlight, keeps his head down, and doesn't make mistakes. And the other thing I want to see from Matt DiBenedetto is get a freaking PR team to help him out. It seems like Matt DiBenedetto has burned a lot of bridges with sponsors over the years, and that, like I said, has hurt his career. And I really hope he does clean it up. Because I am a Matt DiBenedetto fan, and I think, like I said, he is a talented driver, and he deserves to be in the sport. But he has burned a lot of bridges. But I think with AM Racing, again, I don't think he's going to make the playoffs. There's a lot of good competition. Xfinity in 2024. You've got a lot of good drivers moving in there. You've got Josh Williams going to College Racing, which I think he's got a shot to make it. Parker's back in the 48 car, talking about Parker Clearman. You've got Sheldon Creed and Chandler Smith in their respective rides in 2024. You got Shane Van Gisbergen going full-time with College Racing in 2024. You've got Sammy Smith with Junior Motorsports next year. You've got Eric Almirola coming back to the Xfinity Series next year. There's a lot of huge movement that's happened with the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and having a guy like Matt DiBenedetto in Xfinity, I think is a good move. And like I said, it's going to be really good veteran guidance for Hailie Deegan in 2024 if he truly ends up going there in the 2024 season. I think he'll have a very solid year, and I think he'll do good. Now, going off of the driver he'll likely replace, what happens with Brett Moffitt? I think Brett Moffitt has a chance of going to front row. I know there was a report that came out from Joseph Zoya that said they were only planning to run one truck, front row was in 2024, but I could see him going to a second truck. He ran with Front Row Motorsports in 2023 in a one-off start. He actually won that one-off start at Talladega. And also, remember, he did drive part-time for the team in Cup in 2015, drove a lot of the year, and did have some good performances with that team in 2015. So he has a history with the team. If he was to go to front row in 2024 in a 34 truck, I think that Brett Moffitt would do overall a really good job with team and be a championship contender. He would want to be one of the biggest front runners for a title in trucks and would probably win a couple races throughout the year. Going back to Matt DiBenedetto, though, if he does go to AM Racing, I think he'll be pretty competitive and pretty solid throughout 2024. So we'll see what happens in regards to that. Again, there could be an announcement in the coming days for Matt DiBenedetto. If it does break on the channel, we'll cover it here. But it sounds like there's a really strong chance that Matt DiBenedetto may be headed to AM Racing in 2024. And honestly, I think it's a good move for him to move back to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So, that is good to today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links go below that, and comment your thoughts on today's episode. If Matt DiBenedetto does go to AM, how do you think he'll perform? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Ty Dillon joining Rackley War in 2024? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This is going to be the last NASCAR-related video in 2023. Tomorrow on the channel will be your thank you video for 2023. And then on Monday will be the goals video for 2024. I just want to say I really appreciate you all for the support in 2023. It's been an incredible year. Got a lot of great content dropping on 2024 that I cannot wait for you guys to check out. I think 2024 is going to be the biggest year this channel has ever had. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.